this is GILA. In our brave new COVID reality, I have a gripe to make. It's small compared with the huge injustices unfolding before our eyes, but I'm still angry about it. My American husband and I were planning to travel from Israel to England to see my family there next month, and we'd also booked an internal flight to Scotland with Easyjet and a short stay there. This was back in June, before the Delta variant reared its ugly head. Unfortunately, because we've both had COVID, Israel has only permitted us one Pfizer vaccination after it. We can't have any more for the next few months. I checked. It's forbidden. Now, actually, I think what we've had gives us the best coverage against future COVID and any new variants, though frankly, I don't recommend trying to get COVID. I do know of several people who have died from it and others with long-lasting damaging after effects. But I never imagined that having had COVID would cause us any problems in entering Britain. Unfortunately, the British government doesn't seem to think that recovering from COVID gives us any protection at all. Coming from an orange country, which our country of transit already is, and Israel is likely to be, we would only be permitted to enter without going into isolation with a full course of vaccinations, whether or not we have actually had COVID. And as that is impossible for us here in Israel, I was forced to cancel our trip. To add insult to injury, while our international carrier is refunding a substantial part of the cost of our flights, not all of the cost, but I understand that because they have their own costs associated with our booking and cancellation, Easyjet has refused point blank to refund any part of the actual cost of the flight between England and Scotland, and will only accept changing the dates for these same flights. I've argued with them that in our case, as we don't live in Britain, and now we have no real foreseeable use for these flights, that's very unfair of them. Couldn't they at least give us, I don't know, if not a refund, at least something towards other flights that we could book with them? But all to no avail. They clearly don't care. After all, they already have our money. As a result, I have no intention of ever booking with Easyjet again, and I feel they have essentially stolen our money from us. We're talking about £200, not huge perhaps in the scheme of things, but nevertheless the attitude of Easyjet is unjust and it leaves a bad taste in the mouth. Of course, though, that's a drop in the ocean compared with the huge wrongs in today's world. There are people in Afghanistan losing their very lives because of the complete travesty of Joe Biden's method of leaving it, taking out the soldiers in the air cover first, instead of leaving them in place until everyone else had been evacuated. And the Taliban, with their strict Islamic Sharia law, is back terrorizing Afghanis, especially women and girls, and sending Afghanistan back to the Dark Ages. And the USA, by giving the Taliban a list of all American citizens and Afghanis who helped them, complete with their biometric data, has just signed the death warrants of many of its own people and others who were promised in the past that they and their families would be taken good care of. Frankly, I don't think Joe Biden could have caused more harm to the USA, and indeed to the world, if he'd actually tried to do so. Or perhaps that's what his handlers, Obama, George Soros, the rulers of China and Iran, among other countries who bought him out through his son Hunter long ago, really wanted all along. Certainly China wants to be top dog instead of the USA, and China is still a communist dictatorship. Now, personally, I teach English to Chinese children. I really like most Chinese people, but they're not free to decide for themselves who rules them. And the people of Hong Kong are under the same tyranny fully now. China is likely to move on to Taiwan next. When you have weakness in America, dictatorships, unfree countries, think, okay, I have a free pass to do what I want. No consequences. But then Joe Biden should never have been allowed into the White House in the first place. He and his administration only got there through massive frogs. Not allowed to say the F word on YouTube. Yes, of course, we have censorship as well. in our growing Orwellian nightmare in the West. And most so-called journalists sold out to the left wing years ago now, and usually ignore any real news that contradicts their fake narrative. I find it so ironic that so many people seem willing just to throw away the hard fought for human rights and freedoms, especially freedom of speech, that so many people suffered and died in the past for us to enjoy today, without realizing what they are letting go of through sheer complacency. Perhaps too many people have become soft and apathetic, are simply taking for granted the freedoms as well as the high level of material comfort in the West so many other people in the world long with all their hearts to have. Fortunately, many of us are finally waking up. We're still waiting for the results of the Arizona forensic audit, and other audits in other states are either underway or planned. But it does require enough courage from enough people in the USA to stand up and take back their country. And take back their country today, now. Don't wait till tomorrow. Talking about tomorrow, as I'm recording this, it's the 20th anniversary of the murder of over 3,000 people in the Twin Towers, which collapsed after just a handful of Islamic terrorists deliberately flew planes into them. Those of us who remember it happening live on TV also remember where we were that day. It was beyond any normal ability to take in at the time, and the most harrowing scenes on that day were watching people jumping off the top of the Twin Towers to their deaths, some holding hands, because there was no escape from the fires, from the burning planes. That's why the USA went into Afghanistan in the first place. That's why, under President Trump, ISIS was defeated. To stop Islamic terrorism. And now, pathetic senile Biden has effectively handed over many billions of hard-earned US taxpayers' money in the form of state-of-the-art military hardware to the Taliban, some of which is reported as having already ended up in Iran, and allowed in many unvetted Afghanis to mainland USA, some of whom undoubtedly are really Islamic extremist terrorists. The Taliban let them into the airport and stopped others who genuinely had a good reason to leave. As well as that, Biden's administration has opened the US border to over 1 million unvetted illegal immigrants. Ditto. Senile Biden is not only a complete disaster, but I believe he's essentially a traitor to his own country, to all Americans and indeed all peace-loving people around the world, to everyone trying to stop Islamic terrorism, and he seems to be corrupt to the core. Biden urgently needs to be moved from the office for which he is clearly totally unsuited, and the real winner of 2020 reinstalled as soon as possible, President Trump, so he can start the massive task of clearing up the complete mess that this imposter has made. In just 7 months of his illegitimate administration. The founders of the USA and its constitution must truly be rolling in their graves. Not to mention all the brave soldiers who died in Afghanistan seeking to stop the Taliban, and many, many more people besides who gave their lives for us to enjoy the freedoms and human rights that still too many people today in positions of influence are simply discarding, without any real thought or concern for the consequences for us all. Thank you so much for listening.